Hello, World Wide Web. Today is November 22nd, and we are recapping Sunday, November 19th. My name is James.
And I'm Greg.
And we're from the Gate of Life worship team, and this is your Gate of Life recap. We remind you that if you enjoy these videos and you like getting a recap, if you missed a Sunday, check us out on YouTube at Gate of Life Bethel Lutheran. You can also check us out on Facebook at Bethel Lutheran, Rochester, Minnesota. The first reading today is from Thessalonians.
1 Thessalonians. Talking about how the Lord may come as a thief in the night. Doing things during the daylight that you do in the daylight and doing things in the darkness that you do in the darkness. In the reading, it was talking about sleeping in the darkness and drinking in the darkness. Having drunkenness and bringing people out of darkness, bringing them into the light. Be able to, one, praise God and live our life how He wants us to live our life.
Gospel today is from Matthew, and it talks about three slaves and how their master, the person they work for, gave them a bunch of money. All right, so the first person, a ton of money compared to what they normally get. Then next one gets a smaller amount, and the third one only got one like
pile.
We'll call them piles of cash. They were meant to do whatever they could with it, and they went out in their ways. And the first one invested their money, and it multiplied. He brought it back to the person who gave it to him, gave it back, and he was very happy with what he did. Right. Second guy put it in the bank, and he did something else, got a little bit more money, not as much as the first person, brought it back, showed that he made a little more money. The third person buried it and brought back the exact same amount.
Right. There was no accrual, no interest.
Yeah, there was no interest. There's nothing gained from it. And the master was very upset with him, and he cast him out into the outer darkness. And we have spoken about the outer darkness before.
Yes.
In another video. We'll get back to it during the sermon.
Pastor Norman started off the children's word with a picture. And
what was the picture, Greg? What was the picture?
An orangutan.
Not a penguin?
No. Not a chimpanzee?
No.
Not a gorilla?
Not a penguin either.
No, not a penguin. He went back to talking about this mother orangutan, and people had given a check to the orangutan, and she ripped it up, she ate half, and she threw the rest away. Pastor Norm kind of ended it. He wanted the kids to use their gifts that they were given. Be it singing, playing. He really got down with them and, talked to them about what their gifts are,
Yeah.
So it's something that we as an adult might need to think about, for our kids. What kind of gifts do our kids provide for others?
That'll lead on to the sermon today, which is called Excuses. And it actually reminded me when I was listening to him about the story I heard from another friend of mine. A man died and went to heaven, and at the pearly gates he looks over at St. Peter, and he's like, I'm so excited because I'm ready to meet the greatest leader of my time. St. Peter looks around, he points at this man and said, there he is. He's like, no, that's impossible. He's like, why is that? He's like, because I've sat next to him at a desk for the past 20 years, and he didn't do anything that would be leadership. And he said, yes, but he was given the gift, but unfortunately he never used it. So if you're given all these gifts, musical talents, singing, speaking, organizing, or maybe you crunch numbers, and that's what the sermon was about today. Because the parable is kind of a confusing one. It feels a little unfair because the man really didn't do anything, right, on surface value, right? He didn't do anything with the money given to him. He didn't lose it. He didn't invest it. He didn't spend it. He just brought it back the way it was. And at first, when you hear that he got cast out into the outer darkness, you're wondering that's very unfair, right? That doesn't make any sense. But what Pastor Wall talked about is being given this gift and never using it. That's where the music comes in, like when St. Peter pointed to the man who spent his whole life working in an office versus using his God-given talents to become the greatest leader of his time. And it feels like it was stolen, right? Yeah. It's like stealing from God. Like God gives you this great gift, and when you don't choose to use it,
it's like stealing.
It's like stealing. Yep. It's like stealing that talent because you're given that gift for a purpose. If you don't use it, it's God gave you that gift.
Right. We have a good time with the talents that we're given as a group, and we share them every week.
Yeah.
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 And it's pretty cool to have younger kids come to us and say, hey, we want to be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we want to join your band and play in your band. It's like, yeah. You know, so getting that youthful exuberance, you know, to partake of what we're doing is really awesome.
And isn't that one of our missions as disciples too, right?
Right.
To train up the next generation, to know what the love of Christ is and what it feels like to come to a loving environment in a church that like accepts and values what they are interested in.
Yep.
Right? Because those interests and those things that may be a little off par in school, like maybe they'd rather doodle instead of pay attention in class, but what if they can use those doodling skills to add, you know, visuals and stuff to the worship service, or lights or sound or anything like that? Like that's the gifts God gave them.
This thing called Gate of Life will be a continuing factor here at Bethel.
Yeah, like long after all of us leave.
Right.
One last thing I think with the word slaves, Pastor already talked about how in our language slaves tends to have a very negative connotation to it.
Right.
But originally slaves just meant, you know, faithfully serving. The use of the word slave in the parable really isn't like master and slave are at each other's necks. Slaves is faithfully serving the master.
They work together.
Yeah, works together. And that's a term that has changed in our culture and now has kind of a bad connotation to it. We want to remind you that next week, actually, we are doing our annual Advent Christmas decoration of the chapel space. So if you missed this week and you want to come and hang out with us afterwards and decorate, you're totally welcome to join us. We'll have Christmas music and start that Christmas adventure. We invite you to go be disciples of Christ, and always remember, be salty, my friends, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
You know, this reading to me isn't quite as bad as last week's Amos.
Yeah, Amos was savage. Man. He had some emotional stuff going on.
Yeah.
He like hated the world.
But brought up this penguin.
It worked. It worked. Psychology. Awesomeness.
Nito burrito.
There was like a bunch of burritos that are Nitos on the stage. We're Nitoing the burrito with that.
But, you know,
That's too much Nito burritos.
Boom! Nailed it!
Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into, all the fear of the lies we're seeing.